Welcome back to Holy Week. Today is Good Friday, and the Son of God stands trial in the courts of man. Mark 15 begins very early in the morning, but much has already taken place. After Jesus left the Passover meal with his disciples, they went to pray at the Garden of Gethsemane, though the disciples fell asleep. They awoke to a full battalion of soldiers, led out by Judas, along with several of the priests, to arrest Jesus. Jesus was taken before Caiaphas, the high priest, and through a barrage of accusations, Jesus remained quiet. He gave a direct answer to only one question. "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am," said Jesus. And for this and only this, the high priest condemned Jesus, for blasphemy, for who he claimed to be. Now it is daybreak, and Mark 15 opens with the Jewish leaders binding Jesus and leading him over to the house of Pontius Pilate. Pilate is the Roman governor with jurisdiction over Jerusalem. In verse 2, "Are you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate. "You have said so," Jesus replied. More accusations come, but again, Jesus will only answer the question about who he is. And here, as Pilate calls to the crowd to set Jesus free, in verse 12, "What shall I do then with the one you call the King of the Jews?" But the priests stir up the crowds. "Crucify him!" "Why? What crime has he committed?" But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him!" And Pilate gives in. Jesus is flogged brutally and led away to the palace with a whole company of soldiers. In verse 17, they put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Added to the mocking are senseless beating, insults, and spit. The soldiers finish their sadistic fun and lead Jesus to a place called Golgotha, the place of the skull. And in verse 24, they crucified him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. Crucifixion is a testament to the unashamed cruelty of mankind. It was a hideous punishment for crime, and the Romans wanted everyone to know exactly why each man was crucified. So in verse 26, the written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." The priests convicted Jesus because he claimed to be the Son of God, and Pilate crucified him with just one conviction, who he is, the King. Then in verse 33, "At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. Step across history for a moment and set yourself there on the hill of Golgotha, standing in torchlight at midday, the cynical conversation of mockers, the sound of women weeping. Before you, the cold confidence of the Roman guard, refusing to be shaken by a little darkness, and behind them, the man on the cross. Forget for now your own bias and just look on for a moment. What is happening? What have they done? What have we done? The sign above the bloody figure reads, "King of the Jews." Who is this man? 3 hours pass, and in verse 37, with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God." And so the man with the closest view of Jesus' death closes the story with a simple statement of who Jesus is. And just as you turn to walk away from it all, an onlooker next to you asks, "Who do you think he was?" Well, what about it then? Who was he? It would be a question that hung in the air over the entire city, from the palace of Pilate to the house of the high priest, and in the homes of families still gathered for the feast. Who was this man? As many wondered, a centurion was sent to pierce the body, to make certain that Jesus was dead. And then a man named Joseph of Arimathea, with Pilate's permission in verse 46, took down the body, wrapped it in linen, and placed it in a tomb cut out of rock. Then he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb.
Thanks for joining us for today's quick audio guide. You can find the full audio guide for this chapter and hundreds more on the Through the Word app and website. And remember, faith comes by hearing, and hearing through the Word.